let's jump in and talk about your amazing book. Let's start with Claire. Can you tell us about Writing Tree? What was the story that you wanted to tell, and how did you construct the narrative of the book?
Well, this book was different to pretty much every other book that I have written, in that Jess and I started it together. And we had a vague idea about what this book might be about, but we needed to do some information gathering. And so I had a contact in the Toolangi State Forest Rangers station. And so we organised with her to spend a day wandering around the Toolangi State Forest, meeting some of the trees and some of the other occupants of the forest up there. And so Jess and I travelled up there and had our wet weather gear on, experienced every season. We had mist, we had clear skies, we had leeches, we had creatures that we'd never seen before. We had undergrowth, we had mid-sized trees, and then we had these absolutely amazing giants. And even the middle-aged trees, mountain ash trees, are phenomenal. But when you meet the grandmother, this is the grand, the grand ones, they are just majestic. And I guess in thinking about it, Jess and I just asked so many questions. And Kaz, the ranger who took us around, was so generous with her time, her knowledge, her access to resources and things. And I just then took all of that home with us. Jess and I spent 2 hours in the car on the way home. We chatted about what it could be like and the bits that we found amazing. And then I came home and just sort of used that as the basis to research in all sorts of different directions and construct a narrative that would have some sort of cohesion, and not just looking at this tree, but looking at what it provides to the forest and what the forest provides to it. And that was the sort of starting. So after that fantastic collaboration and sharing of knowledge and questions and things, I then went away and sort of locked myself in my burrow in some ways and tried to find a way and to find a narrative for the story. And that's sort of pretty much how I would generally work, except to have Jess there at the start, to have this collaboration begin where it sort of needed to. This idea that we worked on together was, such a gift, such a treat.
Yeah. So what was that like for you, Jess? Because I know that it's not always the case that illustrators are involved in shaping a story from the very beginning. So what was the process of coming into this world like for you, and how did you start building your creative process about the tree and the world around it?
Yeah, I think it just meant that from the very beginning it had a stronger foundation, because we'd already, I guess I'd already skipped a few stages ahead, because Claire and I had sort of discussed even how it would look, or the feelings that we'd had from the day, and the experience of like climbing into one of the mountain ash. What was the name of the empty? Is it mud guts? The empty
mud guts.
Mud guts. So we climbed into a tree. So we had both experienced all these amazing moments, kind of meeting these big trees in the forest together. So when Claire's text arrived, I almost felt like I had the visual language that was possibly also in her head was already in my head, just from spending that day together. But yeah, I think it just made everything more powerful. I'm originally from WA, so when I first got to Melbourne and saw not necessarily the mountain ash, but that sort of environment of those rainforesty, lush mountains around Melbourne, it was such a I remember seeing them as a kid, and I found them so incredible because it's so different to Perth. And so I already just had such a love and fascination for that sort of environment. And I also have a friend with a property who I've been to her a few times, and to get references and ideas about what the landscape was like and all the animals there. It was like we already both had this really nice solid foundation of experiences and knowledge of actually being there, so it made it a lot easier, I think.
I think I just lost you for just a half a second there, Jess, when you were talking about your friend.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It just broke up. Would you mind? I'm so sorry. Would you
No,
mind
that's okay. Sorry if it's
sharing that again?
Yeah, no, just saying that I also have a friend with a place with mountain ash around it. So I just had quite a few experiences being in these amazing environments that the book is sort of set in. And that was very different to Iceberg, where we were completely researching online and had no in-person knowledge of what the environment was like. So it just made the beginning a lot easier, and could skip a few stages along the ladder of all the research and visual knowledge that you want to build before you start actually drawing or coming up with some solid ideas.
I have to ask now, knowing this, that you were you were literally in the tree and you were in this environment. What did you, how did that change what you included? Did it make you bring anything into the illustration? Was there anything in particular from that experience that you wanted to make sure was visually accounted for?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of obvious because I feel like all books about trees do it, but that feeling of when you're looking from the ground upwards and really seeing the scope of like these close-up tiny mosses and bugs and stuff, but then you're also looking 100 meters ahead up to the top, and you can see the breeze and the movement of the tree. So that sort of feeling of grand scale was really magic that day, and hopefully translated to the book. And then there was things like I was saying about my friend's forest. So she bought me a bag of like the leaf litter from the ground there, and she brought it back, and I put them all on the ground and like painted all those leaves for the end papers. So it was really just the experience of actually seeing it and being there, and both the emotions that it sort of gives you and the actual physical environment and the leaves and the bugs and all that sort of stuff that we'd seen in person. I just think it made the book feel very solid and maybe not realistic, but had a really solid base of understanding quite early on, whereas Iceberg, I was learning right to the very end. So it was, it's just it's the different experience, but both of them fun in their own ways.
This book is so evocative. It kind of makes sense now, knowing that you were both really in it and you both really experienced all these different sort of experiences of weather and environment changes. And now I want to also ask the same question, but to you, Claire, was being there, was there anything in there that really stuck out to you as I have to capture this in words?
I don't think it was as tangible as that, but I think, adding to what Jess said, the smells and the sensations and the what we could hear, what we could see, what we could touch. So in a sensory way, we were experiencing this as Jess says, very different to Iceberg, where it was all sort of out there and new knowledge. This was lived knowledge, if you like, and existence. And I try pretty hard not to specifically put something in that I expect somebody to get something from, if that makes sense. I try and absorb all that knowledge and then have it sit on my shoulder when I write, so that when I'm writing, hopefully it will be infused with all the things that we experienced in that forest. And even if it doesn't say smell this, hopefully there's a sense that this is a sensory experience as well as as a written one and an illustrated one. It's got all of the senses engaged in being immersed in this forest and meeting this tree.
I really love how you describe the knowledge as sitting on your shoulder while you write. I think that's such a beautiful image. I really love that. And I think you do get the sense in this book of, I think it is really sensory. I think you really do. I think I mean, I read it and I just really wanted to get my hands on a tree, you know, to really be out there and to feel it. So it makes so much sense that you were carrying that with you. Um, Claire, I really want to ask about your language, and the way that you use language in this book, because it, like Iceberg, is filled with rich and poetic language and language structures, with some words that will be certainly new for young audiences, I think, and others that are being expressed maybe in more creative ways or used in more creative ways, syntactically. And I guess I'm really wondering, how you go about, selecting language, building a picture for children, if there are any particular words you really wanted in there or wanted to make sure they were featured, how you balance, I guess, also writing for so many young people, but also really wanting to create sort of rich language meaning. How do you do it?
I wish I knew. That would be fun if I could bottle it. I think the first thing I need to do when I'm trying to lay out how it's going to be is look for, you know, the story structure, the same way that it will. I want to introduce my character. I want to introduce the setting. I want to give some sense of, really, it's not really plot, but about movement, the way a plot would move, and I want it to get bigger and bigger, until there is an ending. So the structure itself is, I usually know where I'm going to finish, and I usually have some sense of where I'm going to begin. And then you really wouldn't want to see my zero drafts, because they are, they're not even good enough to be called first drafts, and they just give me a line, sort of a shape. And then I go back and I try really hard to use strong verbs and appropriate adjectives. But I try and stay away from adverbs as much as possible, because for me they're very slowing in a narrative, and they take me out of it. And so I write over and over again. I draft over and over again to get those. And so there might be a few words that are unfamiliar, but most of them will be familiar to most, as heard language, even if not written language, in young readers, and in students who are starting their writing journey. I try and use words that are simple as possible, but then just put them together in a way that I hope that conveys what I want to put in. So I'm condensing, distilling down the ideas, so that there's hopefully so much in there that when a reader comes to it, no matter what their age is, there's something that they don't know, but there's something that piques their curiosity and hopefully engages them enough to go and want to find out more. But there's a huge amount of stuff that doesn't get in there. So, for example, I've got a list here of some of the names of some of the really old trees. So they've been around for so long that the rangers and other people around them give them names. And so there's, I think we met the Kalatha giant, wasn't it? Jess was one of the ones we met. But there's also Bodog the branchless, which is in a different forest, which is just such a great name. It's a whole different story though. Curly top, Scarlet Scarface. But the tree that ended up in tree is called Gwen. And it was named because the ranger who took us around called one of the trees that we went to see Gwen. And I thought, what a great, like, personifying it in a way that doesn't end up in the book, because it doesn't need to be personified. It's majestic on its own. It doesn't need to be a person. But for us to be able to think of it like a friend, you know, like a world that is familiar and comfortable and engaging for us, having the name was actually kind of helpful.
I have to ask, I love that. I love all of that. Jess, how did that influence your illustrations? How did you get to know Gwen?
Well, I think when you were saying that, it was bringing me back to Iceberg again, because we named the iceberg Norman, and because the books aren't, a normal picture book has a character which is a human or an animal character that you're sort of following their storyline, whereas this is a character that's actually an iceberg or a tree. So I think having the name makes you keep remembering that that's the one focus of the book is the tree, even though we're talking about the worlds around the tree and the environment it lives in, and that it creates. The really big focus is this one tree, so it just makes you keep thinking of character. And if I forgot, I think the editor Nicola would remind me as well. So yeah, it's a really great tool to remind us all what we're actually doing the book all about, because you can easily get lost in all these tangents of the environment around it.
Speaking of the environment around it, you talked a little bit about having the leaves from the mountain ash that you painted and used for the end papers.
Yeah.
What were the nature references that you were looking to include in these illustrations, and how did you sort of go about creating and layering those?
Yeah, I think, well, Claire's text obviously gives the most amount of hints, because it's all about these interconnected worlds and the floss of the roots under the ground and the way that they talk to each other, and the animals and the bugs and the leaf litter is all part of that world, and everything helps each other, and they all have many lives together. So like a big tree has, follows the life of different animals in many different stages again and again, and can be somewhere where the animals breed and reproduce, or they sleep, or they eat from. So it's just, again, that experience of being in the forest and knowing a bit more about the forest than I did obviously about icebergs. It meant that I wanted to share this, my love and appreciation for these really beautiful environments in the pictures. So it was really fun to think about all these tiny little animals that I've seen, even up just in the Dandenongs, not far from where we live. It's like a pretty magical place. So yeah, it was fun. It's just fun thinking of all these little moments in your whole life that you've been in beautiful forests and try and reproduce it into the images.
I really do think that comes through in the book. I think you really get a sense of the love and care, and also a little bit of memory. I think there's something in the way that you've constructed these images that sort of reminds you of what's outside the door, and that's really lovely. And I know, Claire, that you just said that you don't write hoping that someone will take something from your work specifically. But what you said, Jess, about that love of nature and the environment, I'm wondering if that's sort of, I guess, maybe not what someone will take from the book, but what are you hoping that people leave the book feeling? What are you hoping that it gives readers?
Is that one for me to answer? Or
that's for both of you, really.
Yeah. Well, I can quickly just say that I think there's a really powerful, if you haven't extracted your own message from the story and the pictures, I really love Claire's text at the very end, the one that I've handwritten, because it just sort of reinforces this connection that these worlds have with all these animals and plants, and also with us as well. So I think Claire and I both, through all of our career writing and illustrating books, have really lent towards doing nature books, and find it a really powerful place to spread a message of love for the environment, and maybe a subtext of conservation and appreciation for the way these special environments influence and keep our own lives as healthy as they can be. So that's probably my hope that people take from it, without being too dramatic and forceful.
Well, when we did Iceberg, I guess one of the reasons for writing that is that we talk about icebergs as being something elsewhere or other, and we talk about global warming, and we have all these really scary things that children are aware of, or young readers are aware of, but if they don't understand how magical it is, then it's kind of hard to engage them with it. And I think for tree as well, it's the magic and the wonder that hopefully a reader leaves with, you know, and an idea about just how fabulous the world in which we live is. And if we're going to ask this next generation or the next generation to help protect and save it, then they need to understand how beautiful it is, and and how important all of those connections are, and how clever they are, how amazing it is that all these worlds intertwine. You know, that the seeds that fall from a mountain ash won't germinate unless there's been a fire. Now, they're not like a lot of other trees that fire causes the germination. It's just that fire near them kills the undergrowth, which then allows the seed to shoot. So it's a very different way of doing it. And the seed is, you know, 1.5 millimeters big. And it grows to this 350-year-old massive, massive thing. It's just so magical that can happen. And I guess if magic and wonder is sort of what I'm hoping to share, what we're hoping to share with whoever reads it. And that doesn't have to be children.
Oh, I felt it from reading it. I truly did. It's such a gift, I think. And so thank you both for creating that. It's really lovely. I would love to ask both of you to imagine that the teachers in this audience are going to go back to their students and say, I watched this great video with an amazing author and illustrator, and they had a piece of advice for creating things, for writing, for drawing, and for developing and getting better at this. And that advice is, what would it be? What would either of you say?
Well, I would say don't be scared of making mistakes, that getting it wrong is a pathway to getting it right. And it helps to practice getting it wrong. Getting something on a page is so important. It doesn't really matter what it is, because you can always change it. You just can't change a white page.
Mm-hmm. That's funny, because mine was very similar. I've been doing more and more school visits, and I'm realizing how after a very early age, kids get really embarrassed about their drawings, and they say, oh, I can't do it, or they don't want anyone to see it. And even my son, who's 8, he's a bit like that. So I've just been really encouraging everyone that it doesn't matter if yours doesn't look like your neighbour's. It's not meant to. It's about just having fun, enjoying it, creating something that you feel reflects you in some way, and that things like defining your style or developing your skills just come through a lot of practice, and hopefully it's an enjoyable experience on the way. So all the mistakes are part of the process, and we make lots of mistakes. I always show people the roughs, and I think when people see a finished picture book, they think that we've just gone out and done it on our first go, and I've just started painting and that's what it's ended up like. But you know, Claire goes through lots of edits with the editor, and then I go through lots of rounds of roughs with the editor and Claire, and everyone gives feedback and we find mistakes, and then I refine it, and then I'll go do something and it's not quite right, and then I'll do it again, and then I'll use Photoshop and I'll paste over something. So it's never even doing this for years and years, it's never a easy finished process quickly. It's always it's a journey, and we both love the journey, and hopefully encouraging others to experience the journey and have fun on the way.
That's excellent advice. I love that your advice was linked. I love how clear the collaboration is, and how clearly this is just such a great match. It's really so nice to see. I promise I only have one more imaginary question for you. Which is I'd love to imagine, now that you are speaking to the students of these teachers, how would you describe what tree is and what it's about? This is, I guess, for either or both of you, but I'd love to hear from both of you how would you describe tree to a young audience?
Do you want me to go, Claire?
Go.
Sorry. Oh, I was just going to. I think I would share that tree is a character, and that they can find their own characters in the world around them. It's like just spending time in nature and focusing on almost any part of the environment by watching it and looking at it, smelling it, touching it, whether it be an animal or plant, you can often find this whole world around it, and that's a really incredible way to develop your art and writing and sensory skills as well. So just getting out there and enjoying finding their own characters in the world around them. That would probably be my message.
I would say it's about a very, very long-lived tree and the world around it. But I would also say that it's about the home of the tree and the home that the tree provides for generation after generation of plants, of animals, of fungi, and how relevant they all are in the same place, and that they're all connected. Everything is connected.
Yeah.
What a beautiful last line. Everything is connected. I love that. Thank you both so much.